One area of our lives that we often get into a lot of trouble for ourselves in terms of a lack of peace or stress is when we confuse our values and our expectations of others. And it's important to be aware of both of these things because it can just help us to know how we're showing up in relationships, and it can also help us to know how we need to curate our lives in order to make our life the kind of life that we want to live. And so I was just talking with someone recently about this, and it was clear that there are things in their life that are really important to them, whether that's showing up authentically or even just simple things like doing your hair and dressing up with a cute outfit. And I explained to them that part of the reason that they were having some relational conflict here recently is because they were allowing those values to turn into expectations of others. And one thing we forget sometimes is that just because we value something doesn't mean other people have to value the same thing. And increasing our awareness of these values and then increasing our awareness of our expectations of others can allow us to just allow other people to value what they value. And so perhaps somebody doesn't care what their hair looks like, to use a less serious example. And when they show up with messy hair, we don't have to let that bother us any more than we would, if somebody feels that for whatever reason that they don't value showing up authentically and they're going to be a different person at home than they are at school, than they are at work, than they are in social settings. And that may bother us, but ultimately it's not really our life, and we don't have to like it. We don't have to enjoy it. We don't have to choose to spend our time and energy with people who don't align with our values. But it's hard for us to make choices and curate our relationships and our life in general if we're not aware of what we value. Another important thing about our expectations is a lot of times we get into trouble relationally because we have expectations that we have not communicated to other people. And then we begin to hold people accountable for those expectations. And that really isn't fair. And so again, the first step with all of this is having increased awareness of these expectations. And once we have awareness, we can learn kind of which ones are the most important for us to communicate and which ones do we need to create some space and allow people to value what they value instead. So might be something to consider for yourself in the coming days and weeks. What are the things in your life that are really important to you? How can you curate those things and make more space for them? And then in what ways have you been holding people accountable to expectations that either you don't even need to have of them or that you've yet to communicate? Thank you for listening to today's episode of Voice Memos from a Therapist. I'm Graham McBride, a licensed professional counselor associate, and I really appreciate you taking the time to listen. Make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss our next memo when it comes out, always on Monday mornings. Just a reminder, the content in these podcasts is just my own opinions. They should not be considered therapeutic counsel or advice. And as always, I reserve the right to continue to learn and grow, as I hope that we all are. If you have further questions, feel free to find me on social media at gmc.counseling. This podcast is also available on YouTube if you're more of a video person, along with some longer form content. And finally, if you would like to learn more about what was discussed today, you can find more details in the show notes. As always, I hope you have an amazing day.